Alright, hello and welcome to Plugin Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugin Along, we started looking at how the deed tracker internally thinks about deeds. A pervasive indexing problem where it was the page and then the tab and then the deed and with the indexes of I, J, and K, and it was very unwieldy to talk about a specific deed. We did some work on it on the stream. I did more work on it over the weekend in some spare time, and today we're going to go over how the data files have changed and some of the big changes in code leading up to today. And today, hopefully, we'll just fix all the remaining broken pieces that have resulted, or as many as we can get to. So, as always, feel free to jump into thoughts with your questions, be they about LOTRO in general, plugins in specific, or deed tracker in very specific. So, let's go ahead and get started here. By getting this Kalinard Skarn. So the Treebeard server recently moved up to the Rise of Isengard content, so Kalinard Skarn is the new hotness. So I'm going to keep an eye on my radar here and see if my minstrel Affidel here sniffs out any more Kalinard while we're standing around doing some coding. Alright, there we go. Okay, so what is going on here? Okay, so we have, first of all, let's go check our source control here. This is actually a change I did just before the stream, so don't need that anymore. Added namespace to function call. Just going to go ahead and commit that little change there, and that gives us a clean working directory for the rest of the stream. Excellent. Okay, so what is going on with the data files? So first of all, a thing I want to do with the data files is to actually put them, and they have ballooned here because there tends to be one for each language, put them in their own directory. Let's actually go ahead and pull that up in our Windows Explorer window. So if we go into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, Cube Plugins, Deed Tracker, right now what we've got is a division out between the code that makes the plugin happen, which is a bunch of these files here, and a bunch of files that really just have data, be they deeds, deed names, items that relate to deed, regions that relate to deeds, all of these various things. There is some code functionality in these files, but largely they are just data. So let's crack one open and take a look at that. The first one is the restructuring of the deeds so that they just have an index. This happens to be the internal LOTRO index, as far as I can tell. And using this, we can refer by an ID 1879048666, and get a list back about stuff we care about that deed. What type of is it? How many LOTRO points does it give? How many virtual experiences does it give? Does it have a minimum or a maximum level? What's its name? What kind of lore are we talking about? Is there a summary that tells us, hey, really quickly, how do you complete this deed? All of that. So all of that is in one line, and this is a flat data file structure. There's no hierarchy of where does it appear in the UI to get in the way. It's just an ID gives you a thing. And I'm going to add a little redundancy here. Because the ID is so useful, and because we're often passing around the thing on the right side of the equal signs here, everything over here, it feels a little silly, but one of the things I wanted was to go ahead and embed this ID into the deed object itself. You can imagine this is a little packet of data about a deed, and so being able to type deed.id and get that number back out of the deed seemed like it was going to be worth the trade-off in a little extra memory, a little extra disk space to do it. That might not be the right decision. I may regret that and change it out later, but for right now, that made a lot of sense, because we're going to be passing around the thing on the right here a lot. So that's the deed data, and this is a change from what used to be in the deed info. All of this used to be in this visual layout here. The stuff that's in the skirmish, the stuff that's in the skirmish instances, and then all of that data here. Instead, what we've been able to do is go ahead and say all of the data about the deed is now in the deed data Lua file, and the structure, which is still called deed info. I think I need to, I don't know, rename that at some point. But the actual information about which deed is shown where in the user interface of the plugin. For instance, let's go ahead and load this up. And let's go ahead and show completed deeds. So when we're looking at Breland, which deeds show up in what order and how, and what are the category that shows up between them as well. So for instance, if we come on over here to skirmish instances, we can see that the categories have gotten messed up again. Excellent. That's a thing to hear about. Categories aren't showing up correctly again. Fix it. I thought I had fixed that this weekend, but here we are. So ideally we should have 3 deeds and then a category, a divider between them. And we have 3 deeds and we have something else that looks an awful lot like a deed. Have to track that one down. But that's the idea, is which deeds and which categories. And because I wanted these categories to be localizable, it felt like it was time to, since this is a language agnostic, oh, okay, we're actually getting error messages here. That's probably what's up. Neat. So because this file is now language agnostic, there's one version of it for English and French and German. I needed to pull out those categories and put them somewhere else. This is a way to do that. I'm not convinced it's the right way, but each of those categories is now in the deed category structure, which has English and possible German and French variations, although right now they all just have the English text in there. But if any German or French people, fluent speaking people want to submit changes for those, I'll happily incorporate them in. And so these categories have the basic information. Right now, other stuff like the tier, how far indented they are, has been pulled out of the deed info. And so I'm a little concerned about that, but having all that information in one place is very nice. So for right now, this is just the reference to the other thing. And so this file has gotten much simpler and much more readable, I will say, because the name of what the thing was used to be about, I don't know, column 300 or so after all of these other things due to historical reasons. And so now it's very easy to see, oh, we're in Imlad Morgul, and this is the deeds of Imlad Morgul. This is just a comment to make it easier for us, the developer, to see what's going on. Because it's a comment, it does not matter to Lord of the Rings Online. It is, if it is incorrect, no one is going to come and say, oh, that's an incorrect comment, until we figure it out. So hopefully it's correct. But we can see, tutorial offensive, smoke before the fire, skirmishes in Middle-earth, level 20. Alright, well, first things first, we have an actual runtime error, and we should probably figure out what's going on with that. Plugin functions 175. So let's come on over to our source editor. We're using Visual Studio Code, and within that we are using the LOTRO API extension, which gives us IntelliSense for all of the LOTRO specific stuff going on. Okay, so we want to go to plugin functions, and we want to go to line 175. All right. Excellent. Well, ID lookup, I do have to wonder, is this a namespacing issue? No, it's not. We do have global namespace reference. So this is something, anyone out there who knows Lua better than I do, I'd love to know this answer. When I moved all of these data structures into a subdirectory, that seems to act like a scoping effect. So to refer to this names to IDs table, I need to write data files.names to IDs because that's where it is in the import. But I would really like to not do that. And so my hacky solution is to just copy a reference to that into the global namespace. It's not that I don't want to do that. It's that an unknown number of places in code reference these things, and I really wanted to get the plugin working again after I did that move, and then go and find each and every one of these references and update it. And so this was sort of my hacky way to do it. And I was wondering, like, is there a more reasonable or fluent way to do that in Lua other than just like, oh, no, we'll just have references in both places? So if anyone out there has thoughts on Lua, that's a new one for me. I'm used to namespaces being called out, like in C# or C++, kind of more explicitly in code and not as an implicit part of the directory structure. And ideally, those are very similar, but you can have mismatches. Okay, so we are trying to get an ID lookup. It is nil. That's weird. Oh, right, because we're talking about a thing that is either a feed or a category. So the real question is, why are we trying to get something for a category? Now, something I like to do sometimes is to spit out the call stack when I'm trying to figure out why is this happening. We can just say, hey, what led us here? And so there's this get call stack function in turbine.engine. Get call stack that I find very helpful. So if we actually just make a case, if id lookup equals nil, then we're going to go ahead and spit out to debug the turbine.engine. And then it's get call stack. And that's all. And so if we go ahead and unload and reload this, the trick is to figure out what we did to make that happen. What did I do? All right, replicating the bug. Aha. Okay, so not sure why, but here we go. We're in the plugin functions 176. Great. We were called from get deed information control. Oh, great. Yes. Okay. So this is, among other things, called whenever we ask for a tooltip. Which is apparently not, is trying to do it even if we have a category, which is this fake concept. It's not a deed, it's just a placeholder. Let's come on in and dig through there. So this is being called by get deed information control, this line, 1080. And maybe it's reasonable here to have a check for this. But maybe the people calling it should not call it badly. So let's come on into the tooltip window. Is that where it's coming from? Yep, tooltip window 165. But we don't want to make a tooltip window, so it's really main window. There we go. Main window 724. This should not be passing. This should not be tried to call on a category. That's probably an error right there. So 1130, awesome. There we go. So our is category is not working. So the basic question: where is category coming from? So let's go ahead and search up. So it should be getting filled in by get deed skip info. So let's find that. So there's an is category, and I remember doing something about this. Okay, yes, I did a fix-up the other day, and this was a wrong fix-up. Why is this wrong? Because, like we were just discussing, now that deed categories have been sort of pulled out as their own thing, they no longer show up in this list of deeds. And so every normal deed has a type, and there was a special meta type deed category, but those don't exist anymore. And so kind of by definition, deed, instead of having a type of, I think it was 14, but a special named type, they just have a category ID. Where is that? In here. So really what we need to say is, does it have a thing called cat ID? And if so, it's a category. That's a better way of doing it. So this is category function if deed dot cat ID is not equal to nil. And if that's the case, then it's a category. Let's come along and reload the plugin and see if that works. Well, I wouldn't say it has worked. So we need a little bit more information. What we want to do is come in here and get an example of this happening. And to do this, we're just going to do two things. We're going to have a global variable, because we don't want to spit one out for every single category. Maybe. So output occurred equals false. And then if not output, I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste that so I don't spell it. Then output occurred equals true. And debug dump that deed. Okay, let's give that a shot. Okay, so let's go ahead and hover on over here. And the answer is, oh, of course. That's not very helpful because we're going to get past that a bunch of times. Okay, I was wrong. Let's go ahead and just get a bunch of it. Actually, if we had an example where there were categories but not a lot of deeds. Yeah, the war. The wars are a good example of there's only 44 deeds in common. So even if we're going to spit out a bunch of debug, it's not going to be too bad. But when you spit out a bunch of debug, it does seriously impact performance here. Let's see the games kind of seize up here while it spits out a bunch of stuff. Oh, no, of course. We might call that on every deed, not just on the current tab. That may be a mistake of mine. Yeah. Yeah, we're seeing Gondorian stuff here. That got called on more stuff. So, let's see if we're going to crash. Let's see if we're going to have some Calamite Scarn show up. Okay. So that was too much information. I think we can meet ourselves in the middle by just checking for something that we know should exist only on a deed, which is the presence of that ID. So, if d.ed equals nil, then dump it. Let's try that. Now, there's still a lot of categories, but orders of magnitude fewer. Okay. Oh, type is in there. Did I do something to put that in? I must have done something to put that in. Interesting. I'd forgotten that. So we have a name and we have a type. Okay. We don't have a category ID. So we have a deed type category. I wonder if it's as simple as I was missing this reference, the data files dot. Let's give that a try. Let's come on in here, reload this. Well, that's interesting. We are getting a true here for this is category, but now things aren't getting shown visually. So that's something. Let's trace through here and figure out where is category getting called and what's going on with that. Okay, companion import, not worried about that right now. Mark deed complete from chat, not worried about that right now. Get deed indices, that's for deed completion, not worried about that right now. And get deed skip info. That actually is something we care about. It really feels like we should be returning early if this is a category. And then the rest of this, because the rest of this just doesn't matter and usually isn't going to be very helpful at all. Let's give that a try here. So hide deed. Oh, but hide deed. Hide completed. Okay. Some of the stuff is actually. That is a confusion. I would say the character stuff, not a harm to ask that. Fascinating. Okay, so what's going on with this deed skip info, and why are we not seeing this stuff in the UI, and why did I not see that when I was playing around with this? So, deed type category, that may have been catching us. Let's come on in over to the main file, just out of curiosity. Okay, so that was a thing that was catching us. But visually, we should be seeing those categories show up in the UI. So let's come on in to main window where get deed complete. Skip info. Let's come on over here and see where we're using this skip info. In fact, let's do a global search. Set deed complete, don't need it. Check deed data. Oh, here's where. Get deed or category. Yes. So we actually explicitly set that type here just for that reference. Interesting. Do I like that? It's fine. Okay, so here's where we're using that. And what we would like to do is get a sense of what got returned here for the thing that we think is a deed. And so let's go ahead and find that equivalent IJK that we were talking about. I'm going to close some of these tabs here. There's already so many. We're going to pop open the deed info. That wasn't deed info. And that first category here, that's an IJK of 114. So let's come on in here and say if self.selected tab equals 1 and I equals 1 and j equals 4. And here's yet another headache of mine, is that instead of ijk, which is as everywhere else, we have self.selected tab, and then instead of jumping to jk, it was just ij, which was not a great choice for my sanity's sake. So if we're looking at the thing, then we want to go ahead and debug, first of all, a dump of that current deed, which should really be called current deed or category. And we want to output all of these things. And it sure would be nice to learn how to do the variadic string formatting stuff. Maybe this is a time for it. Maybe not. So we have hide deed, skip deed, level 2 high, is category, is not available, is completed. And then we want to go ahead and dump out each of these things. But it might be easier to do that in bulk. So what we want to do is go ahead and get every comma, dump. Oh, I didn't actually do a multi-select. Every comma, dump. What's going on here? Oh, I pressed the home key, of course. So, in fact, every comma and then control back arrow, dump that out. Great. And we only just missed the last one because it didn't have that final comma. So that'll be the other parameters to that function. All right, well, if we didn't write that too badly, let's go ahead and do a reload here. And we can see we got a dumping out of name equals level 20 plus, cool, type equals 14, and then all of the variables that we got out there, and there should be 6 of them, hide deed, skip deed, level 2 high, is category, is not available, completed. The only thing that was true there is category. Cool. So, why are we not seeing it? Let's come on forward and see, where do we use that? If it's not a category, okay, skip this. Though I am curious, where does this end? Well, that's an interesting question. Also, the indentation is messed up there. Probably to minimize how much this is indented. There's a lot of stuff going on here. So, 986. I gotta wonder. Why is this here? I feel like if I could do a blame on this file, this is main win, maybe I could get a sense of what's going on here. All right. Let's get a blame on that. 986, what happened here? All right, 986. Okay, here. That makes me worried. Okay, main win. Okay, it was just part of that giant cleanup, apparently. So what did this look like? Let's pop open Beyond Compare, get a little side-by-side view that I find a little bit easier to read. Okay, it's current deed. Okay, interesting. I added a not is category. was globaler, I think, than it needed to be. Okay, so this got added. Cool. Let's go ahead and remove it for a moment and just see what breaks. Because something's probably going to, otherwise I wouldn't have done it. Excellent. Attempt to index local D. Yeah. 156 in our functions. Getting a fully qualified deed name from the deed. Yeah, that's... I almost feel like if deed.type equals data files dot whatever that was, deed type category, then we just want to go ahead and return deed.name. If we got past deed, a category, bail out early. Let's see if that helps us out at all. Well, no. Attempt a local deed, a nil value, 153. Great. If deed equals nil, then we don't ever want to call this with a nil, so let's go ahead and get a sense of why that's happening. Debug. So that called with nil exclamation point, and then again we're going to use that turbine.engine get call stack something something get call stack. Okay, because we want to know if that's happening. It shouldn't happen. There we go. Called with nil. That's a problem. And this is happening in that main win again. 1030. All right, here we go. If it's a category. Okay, explicitly we're doing the wrong thing here. Also, we've got a dreaded IJ problem here. This is trying to call get deed with IJK. We shouldn't, I feel like we should stop using this function. Remove all uses of this question mark. Let's circle back on that. We can see right here from this the way IntelliSense has muted the color of this variable. It's not even in use. So there's a certain question of why are we doing the thing if we're never going to use the thing. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that and delete this and say, hey, what's going on here? Hey, look, it all works great. Code that doesn't exist can't break is where I like to go. So, if you can delete it, awesome. Okay, so we have loaded it, and our categories are back. These are the categories. These are fake deeds in the original data structure. Now they're kind of their own thing. They show up to kind of give sense to long lists of deeds. So if we come over to skirmish, we can see the skirmishes open up at various levels, and so this is a way for us to get attacked by a wolf. Fantastic. Okay. So this is a way for us to just make a little bit more sense, to provide some structure and order in a way that the in-game deed log does not. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say that we fixed a bug. I don't know why that bug managed to pop in and I didn't notice it at the time, but there's been a lot of changes. So let's go ahead and get some commits going here. So categories aren't showing up again, fix it. So this is just to do file changes. I do a lot of those. And we can then go ahead and remove that to do item. So fixed categories not showing up correctly. Now, other thing that we can note in the back of our head is we're still getting some debug output coming on out. And so we're going to want to keep an eye out in our diff here, or what has changed, and make sure we don't commit those. So for instance, here's that section right there where we're debugging a very specific thing. We want to discard that before it makes its way into the commits. So do we want this get qualified deed name with a null? I think it doesn't hurt to do a null check here. Kind of guarantees that if it ever happens, we're going to get a thorough explanation of what happened, and it shouldn't happen. So let's go ahead and probably leave it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stage that. This, I think we can go ahead and toss that lookup check. And then this is a separate fix. Excellent. So stage that, stage this, and stage that. Awesome. Fixed. Added namespace to variable use. Okay, so problems I didn't even know I had are fixed. Let's do a reload just to make sure. Oh, cool, we got a person back in the can. Woo! Okay, they've gone offline. That's what happens when I don't notice. Okay, so again, a clean working directory. So let's come on back to our source code. And we can go ahead and close that to comparison. So let's ask, we have two versions of this get fully qualified deed name. The idea being that many times, and let's give an example actually. Let's come on over to Eriador and come on down to Swanfleet and Cardolan, a place that I have not spent enough time. And let's say, is that a good place? Let's go Ravani and Great River. Definitely haven't been there. So we're going to close everything. Great River. Okay. So let's say we wanted to have a completed deed. So Urals Mead Explorer. Complete. Awesome. So what am I going on about? It is useful to me to be able to take in a deed and spit out kind of the canonical, here's the name of that deed, with the deed in the deed log, where you start with the tab up at the top, and then you add in the page down at the bottom, and then you add in the deed name. So we can see here, that was Ravanian. Cool, that's the tab. That was the Great River. Okay, that's the page. Great River. There we go. And then Urals Mead Explorer. Obviously, I haven't actually finished it, but that is the reference for it. So we also see it in the completions window, Ravani Great River Urals Mead Explorer. So that's the fully qualified name. And that's useful because if you have, say, Warg Slayer, there's like 7 or 8 of those in the game before they started kind of specializing those names. So probably Warg Slayer of the Great River. Oh, no. Slayer of the Great River. These are still have Beast Slayer, Brigand Slayer. At a point after this in the game, it seems like someone was like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have a bunch of deeds with the same name. Maybe we should start to differentiate those. So you'll have things like Warg Slayer of the Eastern Net. So that's actually a thing. Let's see, if we do Brigand Slayer and try to complete that, have to spell it correctly. Okay, that was the only Brigand Slayer I had left. Excellent. Orc Slayer? Did not find an uncompleted deed matching Orc Slayer, because there's a capital S. No, because I've completed so many other deeds, these are non-ambiguous. Oh well. We'll just deal with that later. Okay, so we have the idea of a fully qualified deed name. Before, that was always done with IJK, because that was the only way to talk about a deed. So, my question is, how many places is this used now, and why? Okay. Mega says, it looks so hard. So, programming plugins for Lord of the Rings Online scales with the difficulty of what you're trying to do. So, kind of my classic, what is the simplest thing that you can do and be a plugin, is if you go to lotrointerface.com, I'm just going to do a search for it, and you go to the opaque quest tracker. This is a box, an opaque box that sits underneath your quest tracker, makes it easier to read the text, hopefully. Because, I don't know if you've noticed this, but depending on the color of background, let me just say tracking by quest, depending on what's in the background behind your quest tracker area, it may be easier or harder for you to read those, especially if you don't have great vision to begin with. And so this was just like, make a box. And so the code for the plugin to make a box show up on the screen feels much simpler, right? The thing, it feels in concert with the scope of the difficulty of what you're doing. And so make a box on the screen, have some settings for it. The code to write that and the effort it takes to understand it and change it feels much smaller versus the effort to track all of the deeds in the game and show them in some reasonable way, and so on. It was like 3,000 deeds in the game or something like that. And so the effort to coordinate all of that just is it correlates with the difficulty. Not to mention, a lot of these problems are examples of past me shooting myself in the foot due to just not really thinking very good about the problem. Or thinking very well about it, for that matter. So it is hard now because I made mistakes in the past, and now I'm having to go back, or choosing to go back and clean up some of those mistakes. So I hope the idea that this particular plugin is perhaps not the best written or has a lot of complexity going to it doesn't make you think that all plugins need to be this bad or this difficult. Like I said, sometimes plugins are very necessary, but their programming looks so mysterious to a simple user. Fair enough. In the background here, I'm also keeping an eye out for Cardalon Skarn, which is, I think, something we can all get behind. I'm going to move to a different location because none of it's popping up. There we go. Nope. It popped up for a moment. Am I just on the outskirts? There we go. Okay, so yes, I can appreciate that. I would say if anyone's out there is thinking, oh, I would like to write a plugin, certainly you are going to be helped if you have a background in doing any other sort of coding, either for fun or for your day job. But it's not necessary. Other people can learn how to do this. But a lot of the same skills overlap with the day job. Obviously, the fact that I've made so many mistakes in the past that I'm now cleaning up may suggest to me that even if you do this professionally, it's still way possible to do this poorly. I don't actually code in Lua or write plugins for my day job, but there should be more overlap. I should avoid these foolish mistakes, but you've got to make the mistakes in order to learn not to do them in the future. Okay, we have an add completed deed that is not done. This is from the companion import window. The companion import window is a place that I have not worked on during all of this code refactoring. But we can see that it's the only place that uses this. The only place that uses it. So, there's a question of, why do we need this? And can we get away with it, with not doing it? Well, the answer is we have a function, getDeed, in our plugin functions. Let's just spell it out. And this takes an IJK and gives you back that deed, if there is one for that IJK. And so what we can do instead is local deed equals getDeed, and we can see it takes an I, J, and a K. And we can use get fully qualified deed name from deed and just pass in that deed. And we know that this is a sort of a newer version of that. Now at this point, there's a question of, do we have any other uses of this? We have the definition itself, and we have our comment saying, sure, would be nice to get rid of that. And that's it. And at this point, if we go ahead and delete that and update here, we're done. We're done with that goal of getting rid of it. So we're just going to make that the comment, remove all uses of get fully qualified deed name. Cool. So that is this, and that is this. But now that that's done, I actually prefer the name, get fully qualified deed name. I had to make it the new version something different because Lua doesn't easily allow you to write the same function name with different parameters. In a C#, C++ world, I would have had two function definitions that look just like this, except one of them would take I, J, K, and one of them would take a deed. And what the function does, well, there's two different functions, and how they work is going to be different based off of which one was called. But in Lua, this is apparently possible, but much harder, much trickier to make happen, or less obvious to make happen. So instead, there was just a call it something else. And so what I would like to do is actually go back to just calling it get fully qualified deed name. The from deed is redundant now because there's no other option. So the real thing is get nope. Paste that in, get rid of the from deed, and say we're going to go ahead and like it says, I tried to return to the game recently, but there's some problems with the launch. You're programming here, I don't even know how to enter the game. Well, I guess I would say, what problems are you having? So when you first launch the game, you will probably, first of all, you'll probably get a prompt. You can't see it right now saying, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? If you say no, it is not going to work. If you say yes, it'll go ahead and hopefully give you a screen like this. A lot of players come to the game launching it through Steam, is my understanding. Oh, I have a patch? Weird. Oh, that's Bullroarer. Ha, okay. Phew. I'll just let Bullroarer patch. It's the test server. So a lot of players come through the game through Steam, and I do not have any experience trying to get it to launch, though there's lots of people in the forums. Mega says, search for logon server is your problem. Oh, that is usually only going to be a problem when the servers are down for maintenance. As you can see right now, I'm able to launch these. And so I guess I would say, are you seeing that problem right now? Let me just pull up the launcher. Because what I would expect you to see is something like this, unless you have internet connection problems, which if you're seeing this stream, you're probably not having internet connection problems. And so what I would expect you to see is a field for username, a field for password, and a login button with explanation, a little launcher feed here, including things like when is the game going to be unavailable. That being said, I am not a Standing Stone Games employee, and I don't work for them. So I only have the ability to kind of do superficial support, which is to say, hey, if you follow these steps, what are you seeing, kind of thing. But I don't have any access to player accounts or information like that. So I'm curious to hear what you see when you first launch it like this. Are you seeing the login form, or are you not getting that connectivity? And I guess I would ask, are you connecting from anywhere strange like North Korea or Russia or something where there could be geographic restrictions on talking to the Standing Stone Games servers? And making sure that you're using the official LOTRO client that you can download from lotro.com. Those are all kind of some basic high-level things. Search for logon server problem appears after the server selected when into the game. Okay. Are you seeing it on any server that you try, or just do you keep trying just the one server like Evernight or something? As we can see, I am logged into a server right here. Annie. All right. Well, you've got me curious. Let's go ahead and, so I don't boot myself out of the main one, let's just go ahead and log into Evernight over here. So what we should see is that's going to pop up and hopefully connect. Connection's successful. It's loading stuff. Little Redhead says he's going through all the did you turn it off and on again options. Pretty much, right? Like, as we can see, this account can log in to the server, no issue. So it's not a universal problem. This is not affecting everyone. It seems to be affecting you. Other thing I would suggest is, if you haven't already, consider finding your user preferences.ini file and just renaming it to something like user preferences.ini.bak or whatever. Just make it so Lotro's not going to find that file, but we haven't deleted it just in case we want it back. And then launch Lotro again. Make sure you do that with Lotro closed. Launch Lotro again, and that will encourage it to start from sort of a known, fresh configuration. Little Red says, BAK means backup in programmer speak, I believe. Yeah, it stems from me growing up in the era of DOS, where file extensions were limited to 3 characters, and so you had to squeeze as much meaning as you could out of 3 alphanumeric characters. So .BAK is just, same reason these are .ini files, right? Initialization files is a little bit long to put into 3 files, 3 characters. So that would be a thing, is get that file out of there, relaunch Lotro, and see, does that help at all? Usually that's not necessary. Usually you just connect, but obviously you're having an unusual problem. And that's too bad, because connecting to Lotro and then playing the game is a lot of fun. Okay, so I feel like I've exhausted any advice I've got besides turn it off and on again, as Little Red was saying. Some people will go through an entire uninstall and reinstall process, and sometimes maybe that was helpful, but sometimes it feels like it was just like, oh, maybe the configuration file was all you needed and reinstalling just happened to wipe that away. So it's hard to tell what's going to help with people. Okay, we're going to come back in to the code, and we're going to go through with this rename, where get fully qualified deed name from deed is just a little bit too long. I actually want to throw in the parentheses at the very end just to make sure we're calling this where we want. And what I'd like to do is go ahead and figure out how to do the rename. Replace all. Okay, let's do it. Replace 21 occurrences across 5 files. Yeah, let's do it. Why am I so calm about that? Because we're going to check with our source code, our source control, to make sure we did it correctly. So we're going to, it's already saved all the files. Let's come on in. So, plugin functions, we can see from deed, got removed. So that's good. Good. What about these? They look good. All of this. Awesome. More. Yes. It's looking great so far. I guess the real question is, can the plugin reload? Are there any syntax errors? There are not. Awesome. We'll just keep on going through. Give a quick little verification here. Oh, neat. Egg Arthur, thanks so much. Egg Arthur points out there's a September 2021 forum post with that symptom, and for that person, it seems like the antivirus software was blocking it. Mega mentions they don't have antivirus, only the built-in Defender. The Windows Defender software can interfere with some things, and maybe LOTRO is one of them. I guess that would be a thing, is if your Defender is configured to be especially careful with inbound and outbound network connections, then it would be worth checking your notifications area to see, oh, this program's trying to talk to the world. Do you want to allow it? Which can be hard to see in a full screen game. And can be very easy for us to forget that we've done. But you do want to make sure that if Windows Defender is configured harshly, to make sure that it allows LOTRO to talk to the outside world and to have bidirectional communication. How to do that, I couldn't help you with. I tend to search online for how to deal with Defender when it's bothering me, and then it stops bothering me, and then I forget everything I ever did. But good point, Egg Arthur. Definitely the forums are a good source for... Is anyone else having this problem? All right. All of those look like great changes. And so we're going to go ahead and made name simpler. Okay. We're going to commit that. Awesome. So, what are some other things that are standing in the way of this being done? So many, but a few obvious ones. So what I'm going to do is, to exemplify this problem, I'm going to go ahead and unload plugins, and then come on in to some backup files that I've got. There's a lot of cows around here. I think I'm going to move. Okay, so when you are doing plugin development, especially when you're changing how save files work, it's really, really important to keep some backups, some sort of known good files. Both because if it's tracking the information about your playing, you don't want to lose that, but also you want to be able to blow away, sort of messed up save files and restore them over and over and over and over again. You don't want to have to be like, oh no, I have to go in and hand edit this file. You just want to have them set up, ready to go. And so for me, we're talking about moving from version 2 to version 3 of this file format. And so I really need to make sure I have some version 2 files sitting around for that. So let's come on in to Plugin Along, my DTracker version 2.0 save files. Awesome. And we're going to come on in there. And we're all set up to go with that. And then where are we putting them? We're going to put them into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugin Data. This is me. We're going over to Treebeard, all characters. And you know what? We actually don't need any of this. We can blow it all away. Now, why do I feel good about that? I have a backup of it in my Plugin Data. I can restore that very easily. So what we do want is just these two files. Okay, so when we load up DTracker, we're going to see that it's going to upgrade the 2.0 to 3.0 files. Awesome. Interestingly, I am not seeing the update. There we go. Okay, so that's apparently post a plugin launch. Took a little while for it to write out, I guess. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, we have, in the old version, all the deeds were stored in that IJK, tab page deed layout, which makes for a kind of difficult to read through it. We also have the completed quests in that same layout, IJK. And which is to say, if there is a quest and a deed that conflict, we go ahead and save off information with the deed indexes about the corresponding quest. And so what we want to do is we want this index to also be replaced by just the deed ID. So let's go ahead and pull in the new one. We can see deeds, we have a deed ID. Deed ID, deed ID, deed ID. Okay. But we have a similar problem with the uncleared quests, which have an IJ and K, and also a save index. We need those to be deed IDs. And the UI, nope, that's fine. The quests, we need that to be done by deed ID. Okay. Oh, Edelith, welcome. Haven't had audio on and back and forth cleaning house. No worries, gotta happen sometime. So I don't know what all has been mentioned. From what I remember seeing, that error mentioned before had either been A, antivirus blocking it, or B, firewall blocking it. There's a link to a Standing Stone Games help article there. Let me copy that off. Thanks so much for linking that. And that's what showed up when you search for the keywords searching for login server. Awesome. There's some great looking information here. I'm going to leave it to Mega to kind of respond to that. But that's great information. So Mega, an easy way to tell if your Windows Defender is the problem is to just turn your Windows Defender off for a minute. You want to turn it back on afterwards. But usually there is a way to turn Windows Defender or any security software like that off. Try to do the thing that you think it might be interfering with and see if there's any difference. So turn the Windows Defender off, log into LOTRO. Does it work? If it does work, cool. Then there's a configuration of Windows Defender that could help. And if turning it off does not help, then it probably wasn't the problem in the first place. It sounds like you did what you first did. You turned off your Windows Defender and it didn't help. Okay, cool. That's an easy way to kind of rule out that whatever it is, it might not be that. Some people have had problems connecting to LOTRO servers when they try to play at work because those connections have been blocked. And so that's a question. Are you playing from home or are you playing at the office? You don't have to answer that in any sort of textual manner, but something to think about. Okay, let's come on back in here. So what we have is we have the quests, the corresponding quests that have the same name as deeds. Like classic one, Eyes of the Enemy. It's a deed in Moria and it's a quest in Trollshaws. Usually you hit the Trollshaws quest first, but you do it and it's like, oh, is that the deed or not? Unfortunately, the Trollshaws quest is repeatable. You can do it every day. And so we just don't know for sure when you complete something called Eyes of the Enemy if you're doing the daily quest in the Trollshaws or if you are doing it in Moria. We can hopefully guess depending on your location, but we can't know for sure. Oh, Eldolith and Eleanor both ask in chat if you ran LOTRO as an administrator, you actually have to, in my experience, you kind of have to struggle to get LOTRO to not run as an administrator. By default, if you just run LOTRO as I'm doing right here, you're going to get an elevation prompt because it wants to update its own files. So we'll probably see that here. Yeah, it didn't do it. Okay. Weird. Maybe my information outdated. When I first started, it was one of those it's doing it all the time things, and I wanted it to stop. And it is possible to make it stop, but I'm used to thinking that everyone's going to be running LOTRO in elevated administrative mode. Okay, so let's come on into code. We can see here we need to do an update from 2.0 to 3.0, whoopsie, for the quests and the uncleared. So let's come on and do the quests first. So where do we do this? Well, the code to do the upgrade from version 2.0 is happening in main.lua. This is in the load data functionality. Oh, apparently there is a coupon of the week for Morale Bubble Pot. All right, I'm game. Coupon. Morale Bubble Pot. Apply. Okay. What is it? It is a Morale Bubble Potion. Applies a damage printing bubble, granting that. Cool. It's very green. Alright, that's what it looks like. And temporary morale. Oh, it's even telling you how much morale you have. Cool, let's go lose some of it. Oh, and it's gone. Well, I can see that being situationally useful, but minstrels have that same ability, which is nice. And we can do it every minute. Fun. Elvis says, all right, one more thought. Apologies for a super long link. Well, it's the nature of it, isn't it? But it is very thorough. So there's a link to another place on Standing Stone Games. Note, Eldoleth, just for your future reference, you can stop copying after the number on that article number. You can paste the whole thing in -- the connection to the server has been lost. But you can just copy paste up to the end of the number if you want a shorter, cleaner link. Oh, and Mega says they haven't seen this yet. Awesome. Eldolith is right. There's a lot of information there. Cool. Eldolith says I typically will stop when I can see the question mark. Good point. For those who don't know, if you are using a site like... I won't even bother. There's often a query string after the main part of the URL. And it'll often include like Facebook tracking identifiers and whatnot. And you can just like delete that. You don't need to copy that in your URL. What I will often do will take what I think is the right URL, just come into a brand new window, try to paste it in. If it works, great. If not, if I've deleted too much, oops, okay, I took off too much. But I take off as much as I can while still getting back to the same page. Okay. Cool. So in the load data, we have, is this a version 1? No. Is this a version 2? Cool. We need to go to version 3. And so we have the code that does that. First thing we're doing is updating the characters. Cool. And for each character, we're updating stuff. Okay. Mega says the problem searching for logon server attempt 1 of 20 matches their symptom. Cool. I hope what they have in the article helps you. Cool. Let us know. Okay. So, in here, we load the 2.0 character file. We save a backup of it because I don't like doing destructive changes if I don't have give people a backup. And then we convert in memory to the 3.0 structure. Now, I made a new place to store this stuff. We don't actually have to do that. We can store that anywhere. And in fact, I'm very tempted to change this out. I am very tempted. Actually, let's do that first. Eleanor says, I had the problem a few years ago where I tried to enter the server and the game would just disappear. The solution was log in as admin. The problem eventually went away. So a fun thing, right after Before the Shadow expansion came out, some people were seeing a problem where the game would just close to desktop the very first time you logged in with a character. And then it was completely fine every other time you logged in. But you change to a different character, it just closes to desktop, and then you come back in, and everything is fine. I don't know if it's still doing that for those people, but it was the darndest thing. Like, no error message, just like, I'm done. No, thank you. But then you're like, no, I insist, and they're like, oh, okay. It was very strange. Little Reddit says, I think the LOTRO community enjoys the group troubleshooting activity. Certainly, I think there's so many different potential computer setups out there, hardware setups, location setups, different software configurations on their machines. And for those of us who really enjoy playing LOTRO, there's such a great game in here that it just feels like a shame to have that missed opportunity of, like, if you just press the right buttons on your computer, you can have access to this gorgeous game. Let's get you there. Because, it can be really frustrating to be like, I feel like I'm doing all the right things, and it's not working. And there's a lot of competition out, right? Like, there's so many great games out there, it can be easy to be like, well, since I can't get this one to work, I'll go do that one. Eleanor says, I just came back after 20 months out. This is the same name as my main on Gladden. Well, welcome back. Adela has to go move the RoboVac to a different room. Excellent. Well, good luck with that. It sounds like you're talking about one of those little puck ones, what are they called? Roombas. Or equivalent. Oh, and Adela also plays on Glad with the same username. Awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, instead of actually calling it out in the character structure, this struck me as a little weird when I looked back at it, because it doesn't need to be there, it just needs to be somewhere. So local new deeds equals a table. So this thing, we want to go ahead and name it new deeds. And then we're not kind of mucking about in that same memory structure that is about to become the real one that we're using. It's just, here's a table, we're putting stuff on the table, and then this table has the same contents as this other table. So I think that works, but really there's only one good way to find out, which is we're going to come on in here. We're going to go ahead and make sure we unload the plugin, because it's just going to replace these files when it unloads. And go ahead and delete, copy paste, bring them back in, and go ahead and load. So it thinks it upgraded. We're going to unload, and then we're going to go ahead and open these back up in our text editor. And so we can see we still have a deeds section. Excellent. And we don't need the UI. Uncleared is empty because it's not being converted over. That's a problem. Uncleared needs to be converted over. We are having data loss in this plugin until we fix that. Let's see. Okay, LDS says it's a cheaper brand, but similar to a Roomba. Cool. All right, enjoy your robotic servant. Fun. And more Gladdenite chatter. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, and then the quests thing. Okay. So what we want to do is, that uncleared thing actually worries me more because of the data loss, and, I want to have that list for myself. So what we want to come in is, okay, so for each characters, yep, okay. Here's where we do the deeds. And we need to do the same thing. Make a temporary place to store the new quest completed format, and make a temporary place to store the new uncleared format. And it might be nice to have a little bit more structure here. So update deed format. And this is a habit I just got into from probably my C++ days, which is if you want to comment that you're done with something, you can do it in any way, like done or whatever. But just that notation of a destructor in C++ is like, oh yes, it's just a fast visual way. But if you're wondering why I'm using a tilde in this manner, it just comes from C++, which doesn't feel relevant for Lua, and yet here it is. Mega asks, I don't understand one sentence. Oh, Eleanor, hang on a sec. I don't understand one sentence. What does it mean, need to set up exceptions for the following ports for LOTRO? 9000 through 9100 and 2900 through 2910 as TCP to B port connections. Short answer is, your computer has a firewall, which is a piece of software that tries to prevent unauthorized stuff from talking to your machine, but can also stop unauthorized stuff on your machine from talking to the world. So it's like a wall with specific holes in it that you allow messages to go back and forth. So conceptually what you're doing is saying, oh, we have a few more holes to open up. And the specifics on how to do that are going to be Windows Defender specific. But a thing you can do is go into your favorite search engine and say Windows Defender port exception, and kind of follow the steps that you find there. If you can't find anyone on the forums who have done a similar thing and done a write-up of it. Eleanor, are those board games on your back shelf? Yes, they are. Yes, they are. You are probably seeing part of them. So we have board games in the top half of this bookshelf. And then they have more board games in this little thin one. That's a lot more of our card games and stuff. And then there's more board games along all of these shelves up here as well. And at least 3 board games over on the table. So you can't even see those. Okay, so we have the update quests format. And then we're just going to go ahead and mark that and say done with that. And then update uncleared format. And we're going to say we're done with that. Okay, so is that necessary or required? No, we're starting to get a lot of stuff here. And this might be a good place to break it out into sub-functions, and probably should do that actually. But until we do that, this is just a way to visually differentiate chunks of the code. Eleanor says, I recognize a few. I would believe that. Some of them are well known. Let's see. What do we have? Kingdom Builder is probably well known. Kingsburg, Sulcan, all sorts of good stuff. We have Hoaxspunning, which is the Dutch version of Power Grid. Eleanor says, I own about 175. Nice. We downsized a lot when we moved from the United States to the Netherlands, because it was basically paying to ship all of the ones we wanted to bring with us, except for whatever we put into our carry-on bag. And so we ended up divesting ourselves of a lot, and we've kind of crept back up. You know, it's fun to buy board games, but we're probably at that point where we're probably going to start divesting back down. Okay, so quest format. What we want to do is make that temporary spot, local new quests equals table, and uncleared, local new uncleared equals a table. And so what's going to happen is the same thing as before. We're going to say car data, car name, and what do we have here? Quests. All right, it is quests. Quests equals new quests, and just so it doesn't hang around, new quests equals nil. So the garbage collector can come and clean that up. Eleanor says, mine are mostly war board games. Nice. I would say ours are mostly not war board games. Little Redhead points out that the collection is mostly up to date on the Board Game Geek website, if you're curious. She's Little Redhead there. And so if you're not familiar with it, BoardGameGeek.com is a way to... The Redhead has pulled out D-Day Dice, which is technically a war game. Probably. Slunky says, welcome in Nederland, bedankt. Wij hadden van in Nederlands wonen. Okay. So we have a couple of things, and we're going to do that same basic idea here. Sharky says, you're welcome. You also speak Dutch. Impressive. I appreciate that. I can speak until I run out of words. Like, my vocabulary is so small. Like, if I'm doing common phrases like, ik wil een drankje hebben, or something, like, I can do that. But then when I need to say a thing and I don't have the word for it, it all kind of comes crumbling down. And then when an actual Dutch-speaking person speaks at full speed at me, it's all over. I just can't process it quickly enough yet. So it's a work in progress is what it is. Car data. Car name. Uncleared, I think, is what we have. Let's, oh, well, that was a clicking on a healing potion. Oops. Uncleared, great. I'm going to go ahead and say that is new uncleared. And we'll go ahead and say new uncleared equals nil, just to let the garbage collector come clean that up as well. So that's the basic structure, but we don't actually have any data here. So that's a problem. Eleanor says, I need to get rid of a few of my board games. Yeah,
Eleanor said that.
Yeah, Eleanor. I feel like I'm at a place in my board gaming playing lifespan where we have friends that have a collection of board games, and fortunately different games than we have. And there's board game shops we can go and play some free samples at, let alone buy new ones. And there's so many things pulling at our attention. And so it feels like having games that aren't getting played regularly compared to having fewer games, but more of them get on the table, or percentage-wise. We could reclaim some shelf space and also kind of increase the percentage of our games that get played. That feels like a win. Redhead points out, we took a year of Dutch classes, so I hope it's at least partway decent. Eleanor says, I playtest and helped design board games as well. Awesome. We got to do some playtesting of an as-yet unreleased game, and it was a really interesting experience. Like, a lot of it was really fun to do, but you could definitely see some of the places where the game wasn't quite ready for release. And it's like, I super hope you're going to change that. And, of course, they're not going to give me any feedback. They're just, like, taking notes of how you're doing, and, they were pretty... playing close to the vest about our feedback. They were taking it in, but they weren't like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to fix that or anything like that. And so it's a really interesting experience. And it was, due to the nature of it, we had to play it for many hours. And anyway, it was a lot of fun in general. Shanky suggests just go into the city and talk to the people there. She is the big city. Don't speak Dutch that well also. All with dialect. Depends on which part of the Netherlands you live in. Here in the East, they don't really speak clear ABN Dutch. When we moved to the Netherlands, we didn't know a lot about the Netherlands, but we knew that in the Randstad, you were a lot more likely to find people just speaking English as sort of a default instead of Dutch as the default. And that was going to play too easily into that tendency of just like, we'll just never learn Dutch. We'll just do English all the time. We wanted to be encouraged to learn Dutch. So living outside the Randstad was a priority to help kind of make that more mandatory. You can still get away with a lot of English because so many Dutch people speak great English. But at least it's a little bit more like, yeah, of course, the bus announcements are only going to be in Dutch, and maybe our neighbor just doesn't feel confident in his English, whatever his English level is. He just doesn't want to speak in English, and that's totally fine. Stunky, I used to play a StarCraft board game. Oh yeah, I painted the figures myself. Pretty fun to play the game. I liked how the StarCraft board game, at least the version I played, which was probably the first edition. Don't know if they came out with another one. I really liked how they represented the folding or the three dimensionality of space with the portals that linked different sections of the board. I thought that was a fun way to do it. Because I mean, making a three-dimensional board is just it's asking for a harder play experience. But a two-dimensional board where parts of it link together to kind of represent a more three-dimensional or folded space, I thought that was really fun. I think that was one of the games we had to give up. It was called a different game in the U.S. I don't know. I had a StarCraft board game, but this was, I don't know, 15 years ago. So that's about all I remember of it. Okay, so we're going to do something similar for the quest as we did for the deeds, because the deeds was also in the same IJK format. We can actually come back and see a little bit. So let's see. Let's go ahead and collapse everything down except like number 4 or something. Where are hobbies? Hobbies are number 3. Okay, let's collapse everything down except number 3 because there's only like 5 hobby deeds so far. And that'll give us a sense of what's going on here. And the same thing with the quest. We can see IJK blah, and we see over here IJK blah. In fact, it's the same thing. We reused that same save structure in the file format. Method when complete, method when complete. So if we do the same thing where an entry is only here if it is complete, looks like that's the true of quests. So the complete feels redundant. And if we change the method and when down to our M's and W's for a little consistency with the new format, like this, then I think it'll be pretty straightforward. And there's far fewer of the quest ones than there are of the deed ones. So let's see if we can knock that out before the end of this stream. Okay, so what do we do in here? We do for I in pairs of deeds. Do we? Oh yes, so there was a meta item called completed, which was just saving off, how many deeds are completed. I'm not sure how relevant that is to have, but it's in there for right now. In fact, let's do we need this in the save file? Question mark. I'll come back to that. But otherwise, we go ahead and initialize the UI, and we go ahead and iterate through for each I, and then for each J, and then for each K. And I want to say the save index was probably also a K thing, but there's a way to find that out. Let's see. If we come on in here to 1122, no, let's come into 61225. We can come on into our source files that we used for the old system and come on into Ariador. And this is 612. My goodness. What do I think the 12th thing in here is? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that is Aragian here, except for Swanfleet and Cardon. So it's actually Enidwaith. Okay. Okay. And then 25. So 25 is the save index of Little Wonders, whereas we can see the ID index, the index over here of 25 would be Fisher King. Fisher King doesn't have an overlap. It is Little Wonders, so we can see that is also save index. Great. Eleanor says, when I was in Württemberg, Germany, the younger could and would speak English decently since they were required to take 4 years in school. Yeah, I don't know for sure if English is required here. I think it is. I think it's part of the standard curriculum for Dutch children. But just like foreign language is often a part of curriculum for American high school students, at least, maybe earlier, just because you took a few years of a language in school doesn't mean that it necessarily sticks in your head a few years later. So if you're not choosing or having the opportunity to use that foreign language on a regular basis, it's really easy for it to just go poof. And you sort of remember little bits and pieces of it, but not necessarily enough to be conversational. And I feel like that's true for instance, our neighbor here who lives in a small village in eastern Netherlands and doesn't need to speak English ever, and so doesn't. And so when some Americans move in next to him, he's like, oh, that's not what I'm interested in. And, don't necessarily blame him. He didn't sign up for that. Macron shows up with a sword in chat. Well, that's pretty cool. Okay, so we are iterating through our I, J, and K here, or save index here. So let's go ahead and copy paste some of these lines. But we are going to need to change the names up a little bit. So, but that's the basic structure that we're looking at here. What else do we have here? And why is there no Carlon Skarn? Sometimes I think it doesn't spawn unless you're actually moving around. Macron asks, what other language is Lua most similar to? Python, JavaScript? That's an interesting question. It is not white space sensitive, and it does not use braces. Macron asks, what is LOTRO coded in? Well, I can't answer that question specifically. I don't work for LOTRO. I'm just a fan of both the games and writing plugins for Lord of the Rings Online. But I will say that LOTRO is launched over 15 years ago and was probably in development for numerous years before that. So, roughly speaking, we're talking, what do we have? 23 minus 18, so 2005. So they were spinning up development in the early 2000s, and so almost certainly they would have been coding in C or C++. Is my uninformed guess, because that's how you make a game like this. Is what I think. But I don't actually know for sure. But I would guess some combination of C or C++ for the engine. There are people in the LOTRO community who will know an answer to that much better than I do. But as for Lua, I would actually say Lua.org might actually have some insight into what it is similar to better than I do. And so if you go to lua.org/about.html, you can see what thoughts they might have or what to share about. But a thing about Lua is it's not white space sensitive like some things. I want to say Python does that. It does not use braces like some more brace-oriented scripting languages like JavaScript. It uses keywords to start and end blocks, and so when we're doing these for loops here, you can see for do, and then an explicit end keyword. Beans in chat asks, would you know a way to toggle my mouse to look in LOTRO instead of holding down the right mouse button? I want to say I don't know a way to do that off the top of my head. If we do a search for mouse on input, we have a look to invert the mouse sensitivity, but that's not very helpful. And in the key mapping, I am not seeing an obvious way to do that. Although there is a camera aligns to slope option, which will like sort of automatically have your camera pitch up and down, which doesn't really work for me. Yeah, I don't think I know an answer to that. Sorry. I'll have to think about that. Meckham says, I think the key mapping assumes press or click, no provision for hold. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of options for rebinding like your primary and secondary mouse buttons the way there is for like a lot of other things. It might be possible on the Windows side of things to use a program to sort of say, if I press the cap locks key, press and hold that, treat it as if I'm pressing down the right mouse button, and then like if you're talking like repetitive stress injury kind of thing, and you're trying to use your gripping muscles of the one hand less, there might be options like that, but I'm not thinking of anything in game. Okay, so we are going through I, J, and K, but we do want to make sure we're going through quests for each of these. And then what are we doing within this save? All right, so don't care about the expanded stuff. That was all UI stuff that we needed to split out. Old deed info, that's going to be old save info. Old save info. Micron suggests if you have a gaming mouse, it might have software that allows you to kind of set different keybinds to make the right click happen. It's a neat idea. All right, so we have an indices lookup table that lets us look up the deed information. And so that is going to be almost like definitely what we want. So let's go ahead and pull that. And that else block. Okay, so we're going to come on in here. So we're going to go ahead and get that indices lookup of I, J, and save index. If not, we're going to go ahead and report an error. It's actually an info statement. Yeah, that's fine. Couldn't update save info for I, J, save. Update quest save information. Differentiate that a little bit. Okay. So we've got this old save info. And we have the deed ID. So we have the deed ID. Method. If it was auto, import, or manual, fixed. Okay. And we have a new, we just need that to be new quests. New quests of deed ID equals that. I call it old save info, but now I'm regretting that. Old quest info. Let's make it a little bit more specific. Okay. So, what are we doing? We're iterating through these I, J, and K, or save index pairs. So, iterating through each one of these. Now, there's not a lot of them, but for instance, 5.2 has a couple of them to iterate through. For each one, we're just going to grab a handle to that specific save item. In this case, we're talking about quests for easy reference. We're going to go ahead and get the equivalent deed. There's a lot of to-do stuff. Neat. And then we have, the deed, the method as an integer instead of a string, just to save some space. And we create that new item, stick it in there. Cool. Okay, so that seems like it's complete for our purposes. So let's come on in here, make sure our plugin is unloaded, and then go ahead and bring those files back for a fresh upgrade from 2 to 3. Now, that is done. It's going to take a second for our backup to show up, but we don't need that. Okay, so what do we have in here? In the plugin data, we've got our deeds. Cool. What about our quests? All right, quests. We can see, oh, it's so much cleaner. We have an entry for each deed ID instead of an IJK. And, oh, it's great. That's very pleasing. I want to look into the uncleared change real fast while we're at it. So, uncleared is going to be very similar, except for reasons. It is historically stored as a collection of indices. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are almost certainly storing I, J, K, and the save index. And so what we want to do is keep the order these are stored in, because this reflects the order in which it is stored in the user interface completion list. But for each one of these, just save off the deed. In fact, 236 would just be the deed number. It doesn't even need to be a table. So, what is that going to look like? Okay. First of all, we want to make sure we understand what those indices are. So when we see uncleared here, we want to go ahead and my phone wants me to go get the laundry. Well, that's going to have to wait. In the completion window, I've already updated the code to assume that the index equals an ID, which is going to make it hard to know what it was doing. Little Redhead has tried to do an li reward command, but I'm not seeing that come up. No, I don't think there is an LA reward. But on this track, which we are really getting close to the end here, there is the legendary coffer of the Warm Winter Goat Kid. Just in time for winter to end. What was the midway point one on this? I haven't actually collected. I'm really bad about collecting my stuff. Legendary coffer of the Red Salamander. Ooh, nice. And 25. Coffer of the Black Key, Steel Key. Yeah. And 75. Another key. Great. Okay. All right. So one of the nice things about source control is we can go back and we can see what was this. And so if we go ahead and let's unload our plugin because we're about to rip things out from under it. And main. Oh, you know what? We can go ahead and commit some of these changes. So changed temporary variable name. So that was this one and this one. Was that it? Oh, it was also down here. Excellent. Okay. So we've got that commit. Coming on in here. Added comments. Stage that. Stage that. And stage this. And then finally, added V 2.0 to V 3.0 quests code. And that's going to be all of this. Awesome. Eleanor, you've said you're not good at that either, but I've forgotten what you might be responding that to. So I'm afraid I lost the thread of that conversation. How many cats do we have? We currently have 2 cats, one 6-year-old and one 8-year-old. The 6-year-old is napping on a chair under that table there, and the 8-year-old is napping in a bed on Little Redhead's desk over there. Oh, cleaning loot. Yes, absolutely. I mean, on the one hand, I just feel like I'd rather take an hour out of my life to kind of sort through all this, figure out what I'm keeping, what's going to alts, whatever. instead of just doing little bits at a time. And so it's going to take a lot of space in my inventory. So like, let's make a day of it, kind of thing. So yes, we only have the 2 cats, and they seem to be pretty good about mimicking us. Little Ratchet and I spend a lot of our time kind of sort of sitting, staring at our computers as our gateway to the wider world, and they're usually pretty good about either napping near us or sitting and watching us as we watch our monitors. Possibly confused as to what we're doing. Okay, so using source control, we can go ahead and come in here and take a step back. So if I go ahead and just stash in work, apply me, these things go away. And I can come on into the tree and freely move back and forward without worrying about anything. So if I just come on back to before we even started doing this feature, or this rewrite almost of some basic stuff, and then come in into the completion window. So if we search for uncleared, all right, so we're talking about indices. Great. We're talking about get IJK from indices. That's useful. Save uncleared. Okay, so we're getting the indices from the control item. Awesome. That comes from the plugin file, plugin functions. And get deed control, deed information control. Great. So IJK, where do we set the indices? Equals IJK save index. There we go. Okay. So this is what we need. In fact, I'm going to yoink that. And then step forward in time, add that stash back in, great, and then here we are back in modern time. And so what we can do is say, update that version 2.0 format was looked like, and we can bring this back in. And so now we have this record of what it should look like. Okay, so what we want to do is different, because what we want to do is step through each one of these, the keys and the values. So we can use a pairs function for this. And instead of for I, well, it is going to be pit and pairs. Excellent. So for I in pairs of uncleared do, and now we are going to have a key value. We're going to have the key and the value, this table. And so what we want to do is just convert that to key equals deed ID. So in these indices, 1, 2, and 3 are going to be I, J, and K, and then we have the save index. Probably. Let's go ahead and double check our assumptions there. If we come on back into the source files, we can see number 1 is 2, so that's instances. Instances, the third tab, so that's Scourge of Casa Doom. Number 3 is 17, with a save index of 16. And we can see that same thing. We can see that there was a K of 17 with a save index of 16. Awesome. So those are the values we want, 1, 2, and 4. So local I equals V1, local J equals V2, local save index equals V3. And we can do the same thing here that we did before, where we do the indices lookup, and let's yoink both the if and also the else. Because we do want something. Could not update uncleared save information for I, J, and save index. Okay, so we've got that. Let's pretty up our indentation here. And we're ready to go. What are we going to do with this thing? Who even knows? I'm making it up. Okay, so we have, we want to add a new entry for the key and the value is the deed ID. So we want new uncleared of k equals, oh, we didn't actually save off the deed ID. Let's grab that. So we have the local deed ID equals that, and that equals deed ID. And that's really it. Because at the end, we already have code that's going to go ahead and copy over in memory into the right place. So yeah, let's take a look at that. And why is there no Kalinard Skarn? Oh, I just want my Skarn. I'm tracking it. So sad. I'll just get to the road for nominal safety. Hey, there's one. Right next to this bull. Sometimes I come out here and it's just skarn after skarn after skarn, and sometimes I come out here and it's disappointing. Oh. Leave me alone. I'm just a dead hobbit. Okay. So, Little Red said, I was chilling out kind of near you, so it's possible I was taking yours. Oh, okay. As long as one of us is getting it, that's the important thing. Okay, so we've unloaded the plugin, so we want to come on back to the save files here. And we want to go ahead and delete these, kind of redo the whole 2.0 to 3.0 thing. And we're coming in and loading the deed tracker. And we have stuff. Awesome. Could not update uncleared save information for index. That's awesome. Let's go ahead and dig into that. It could be that I have misunderstood something dreadfully. Like maybe one of those should be used K instead of save index. So let's come on in. Now, there weren't that many messages, and that's interesting to me. Actually, you know what would be even better? Is could I save information for k equals k index of that? Because I would like to grab what is that k? And so we're going to go ahead and make sure we've unloaded, redo this whole thing, load the deed tracker back up. Eleanor says, I wish hunters could feign death. Little Redhead says, we can't even feign having aim half the time. Ah. iBlood says, when is the next letter for the game coming out? I think you mean a producer's letter, and I actually do not know. I don't, just to reiterate, I don't work for Setting Stone Games. I'm just a fan who enjoys both the game and making plugins and sharing plugins with other people. So I have no insider knowledge of that. So if they haven't announced it on the forums, then your guess is as good as mine. But we are at the start of the year, so now it seems like a great time for it. Okay, we've unloaded the plugin, all the files are there, so we can come back in and take a look and see what has happened. Now, we got the same thing, so I love me a reproducible issue. And so when we come in and we look at the uncleared section of this, we can see the last one, number 257, as an example. And what should it have been? Well, if we go into our source files, this is, again, instances. Got to get those instances. Number 2 is 3, so that's Scourge of Khazad-dûm. And number 3 is 28 slash 24. So that should be the Dar Nagabud Orc Slayer. And we can see that is interesting. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one, the wiki order. So that should be 24, which is that. So that's Plants of the Waterworks. That's what it should be. So what went wrong? Well, if we come on into our lookup, we're looking at the indices lookup file. And this is in the main indices, deed indices to deed IDs file in the prior save formats directory. And so let's take a look at it. We have instances. We have Scourge of Khazad-dûm, and we're looking for Plants of the Waterworks, which should be number 24. So what do we have here? 2, 3, 28. So are we looking at the wrong thing? We might be looking at the wrong thing. I did! Save index. Save index needs to come from V4 because K comes from V3. Ah! Such a small mistake to cause such a large problem. It's like a metaphor of the ring all over again. Alright, so we've gone ahead and restaged our save files. We go ahead and load, and let's scroll on down, and we can see no problems came from that. We did get another problem, though. We can see a plugin functions attempt to concatenate local summary, a nil value. Well, that's great. Little Redhead points out to I in chat, the community manager Cordovan streams on Fridays at noon Eastern US time. It might be worth popping into chat the next time he's streaming, probably this Friday, and asking. I know community engagement is important, and the more people who are asking about it, the more they know it matters to us. Okay, so we can come on in here and look at not only deeds but uncleared, and now our uncleared ones are so much easier, although I'm a little concerned about how these numbers are coming in as quotes. That's normal. Okay, so if we go ahead and pull up our deed tracker, our completion window has the stuff, 262 entries. Oh, that's so good. If we come on into the save file, do we see 261? We do. Do we see 262? Yes. Do we see 263? We do not. So that lines up very nicely. These are not serialized to file in any specific order. And so this is not a concern to us. If we cared, we could actually come on in and add a comma, because we do need that to be valid syntax, and then we can just sort, select the area, and use the sort lines function of your program. Unfortunately, it'll be a naive sort, so your 1 will come before 10, before 100, before 101, and then your 11's, it won't be a great sort, but it's a partial sort if you need that. Little Redhead just found a signature creature called Ancient Bog Slug. Where are you? Down in the bog?
Yeah.
Fascinating. Wagner asked, did you learn the story to any detail before doing this? I guess I would ask, doing plugins? I have characters in various stages of completing the game. My highest character is, I don't know, 130s and has done a little bit in Northern Ravanian. But no, I have not completed the story content of Lord of the Rings Online. I keep getting distracted by life. I keep getting distracted by plugins or new servers start up like Treebeard, which is what I'm playing on right now, and I really enjoy Treebeard. So it's very easy for me to just hit the reset button and start with a fresh character. So no, I know the story of the books that the game is adhering to. Mitch Mannix asks, how long would you say it takes to level to max? It's a really interesting question. Having not actually gotten a character technically to level 140, which is the current max, but I have gotten one to 130, which was the previous max, and 120, which was the max before that. It's actually a thing that I'm interested in trying. Like, if I were to just do it right now, like how many hours of playing would it take to do 1 through 140 if you kind of optimized the experience for things that give a lot of experience. Questing gives more experience on average than just killing monsters. And completing deeds doesn't give any experience generally, and is only useful for the virtue experience. So if you don't need virtue experience, just don't even worry about deeds. Like, yeah, if it takes you an extra minute to complete a deed, okay, but otherwise, just quest. Instances are fine if you don't struggle with them. Like if you can do a work pens run successfully, that can get a lot of experience. But in terms of clock hours, I would have. That's such a good question. I don't know. I would guess you could do it in a month or two, but it really depends on how much spare time are you doing this. Is this like an hour on the weekends, or is this like 4 hours each day kind of thing? Uh, oh, I would guess if you're able to give a couple hours on weekdays and more hours on weekends, that I would guess it's less than 2 months of playing the game to get to max level. I don't know. You're only level at the moment. You're just out in the Shire. Awesome. Those early levels can go fast. Actually, I when playing the game, um, I so often am getting more experience than I want. That I will often get a Stone of the Tortoise. Since we're playing with a group of us over here on Treebeard and experiencing the content, I don't necessarily want to go from 65 to 75 too fast, which is where we are over here on Treebeard. And so the Stone of the Tortoise will actually turn off your experiencing gain. So I actually have the opposite problem. Not that I level too slowly, but I just level too fast. And so this is a store item that you can buy to disable your experience gain. And so since I'm so often fighting the opposite problem, I've never actually tried to just go 1 to 140 and see what happens. Good point from Little Redhead. Some folks on Bombadil and also Treebeard went 1 through 50 really fast, and that's fair. I don't know how much the leveling experience slows down as you get to higher levels, but if you want to get from level 1 to level 50, that is accomplishable in weeks or possibly days. Little Redhead points out if you really want to zoom, Shadowfax characters get plus 150 get 150% of normal experience. And so you can get to max level on Shadowfax much faster. Also, if you have bought some of the versions of expansions, you might have things like the Fateful Gundabad Earring or the Focusing Earring of the High Elves, which themselves give you plus 25% experience gain. And so if I were to ever try the 1 to 140 race, I would probably make a character without those because that doesn't seem fair if you are trying to compare. Okay, great question. So we have now a way to convert the 2.0 to 3.0 save file for completions and for the quest completions. Those show up now in the file as well. So if we come on over here and shrink up a couple of these, so the deeds, it's just deed ID gets you something. Uncleared, the order, the deed, great. And UI, that actually should be in the IJK. And then finally quests, which also show up in this. So we've converted everything in the save file that needs to be converted. And that's a nice feeling. So I think we've just crossed the hour, like 20 minutes ago, I guess. Oops. So we're going to be wrapping up the stream here shortly. So yeah, if you have any last minute thoughts, comments, questions, ideas, toss them into chat here. I'm going to go ahead and start committing some of these changes we made into our source control so that we don't lose them. Tellurian says, if I recall correctly, a streamer managed to get to 105 in 2 to 3 days. Ragnar is talking about some story stuff. If you can read The Hobbit, then it'll be okay. First to second and then third Ents were planned before Saruman. You were saying, I'm not sure what that relates to. And you're asking main coding language. My main coding language during my working hours is usually C#. In the past, it's also been C++ and other various things as the occasion warrants. Mitch Mannix asks, is that server set up the same on D&D Online? And the answer is I don't know. You also asked, do I work for the dev team? I do not. I'm just a fan who enjoys Lord of the Rings Online. I enjoy writing plugins and sharing how to write plugins with a general audience. And so I have no particular inside knowledge going on. Is the server setup the same on D&D? D&D Online, I don't know. I mean, I know they have different servers that act as partitioning for the population, which reduces server load. And lets different communities develop, I assume, just like it has over here on LOTRO. So the community feel can be different from server to server. But under the covers, I don't really know how that works. Interesting questions, though. Okay, so we've gone ahead and added 2.0 to 3.0 uncleared. Updating code. Awesome. And that's the only change we did, just the code that does that. And as we saw, it's pretty simple. We got to iterate through all the starting stuff and just pop in the new structures as needed. So we're going to go ahead and commit that, push it out to the cloud so that if my computer is hit by lightning, it's still there somewhere. Awesome. Okay. So to do, need to update from, oh, I forgot to make that change, from 2.0 IJK to 3.0 for request and uncleared. Then find any uses and update the logic. Now I know uncleared is good. We're seeing that working. Quests. I guess that is a question. If we were to go ahead and search for quests using that, what do we have? Conflicting quests. Yes, that's all fine. Don't need that. Okay. Quests. Deed ID. Great. Deed ID. Deed ID. Resetting it. Okay. And then this is just updating it. Okay. That seems to be good as well. That'll take actually playing around with that a little bit with our debug capabilities. Fantastic. Now there's some big ones. So some big to-do items left to go, but we're really making some great progress here. For instance, completing a deed that has prerequisites should be automatically checking those prerequisites. That's not working right. Need to dig into that a little bit. But no, this is going very nicely. So that's our to-do file changes. Awesome. Someday this will get released into the world. Little Redhead points out to Mitch Mannix that Druid's Fire, who streams LOTRO here on Fridays, also plays a bunch of DDO and would know more. Thank you for pointing that out. Very nice says, wish I could say more. I love LOTRO and it's going to follow the channel. Thank you so much. I primarily stream over here on the LOTRO stream and on Tuesdays starting at I want to say it's like 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. It's 8 p.m. for me. And yeah, happy to have you back next week for more of this. Okay. Well, I think that's going to be everything for today. Yeah, I think so. That is everything we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I do hope to see you here next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.